Hello, everyone. Today, I'd like to talk about the smooth jazz genre. Now, I'm not here to discuss the good and bad, anything like that. More here to discuss my experience with it, how I felt about it, how I got into it, and what I think was essentially the peak of smooth jazz and its start of the decline. Okay, so the smooth jazz genre, I think, really technically speaking, and it probably didn't call smooth jazz at the time, but it started around either in the 70s or maybe the late 60s, where you have artists that would do covers of pop music at the time, as well as, I guess, jazz songs that would be crossover or that would be more popish, I would say. To me, in the 70s, you would have like Grover Washington Jr., George Benson, Earl Clue. I think they kind of kick-started, or at least that smooth jazz genre. But I think most people, including myself, would think of when they think of the smooth jazz genre, it probably would have started in the 80s, right? So, and with the kind of the more of a drum looping beat, kind of beat heavy, well, not beat heavy, but more of a beat, continuous beat from like a drum machine. A lot of synthesizers, even though there's quite a bit of smooth jazz that doesn't have it. But since the synthesizer back type of jazz instrumental music that you would kind of play a saxophone or something on top of it. So now it gets a bad rep, and I understand. I mean, most people call it like not jazz, more elevator music, and elevator music being like fall sleepy music, things that go, you hear it from one ear and just goes out the other ear, and you don't really think about it. To me, it's almost a good description of it. Although I would add to that, goes in one ear, you would head bop, and then goes out the other ear. So I do like smooth jazz for the most part. Okay, I don't think it's as bad as what purists would say. So people, the jazz purists, traditional jazz, bebop, hard bop, fusion, whatnot, whatever you want to call it. I don't think it's as bad as that. Yes, I get it's not as complex or anything like that from a music theory standpoint, but man, I liked it. So my first intro into smooth jazz without even knowing it was although I heard the term, but not knowing exactly what it was the radio station WNUA. 95.5. Okay. Well, anyway, so WNUA 95.5 was the smooth jazz radio station that I actually would frequent after not finding a song I like to listen to in the two or three top 40 stations. So, as a kid, you know, radio stations was my music education, and I would listen to the top 40 or the popular stuff at the time. And there was like two to three stations with that. Now, if I couldn't find anything I liked to listen to in any of those three dials, whether it be commercials or songs I didn't like, or just pure talk, I would flip over to different radio stations. My go-to usually would be a classic rock station, but smooth jazz came into play, and I kind of stuck with it for a while because I actually liked it. They were playing at that time all the big artists at the time. So you got the Kenny G's, you got the Acoustic Alchemies, Spiral Gyra, I just name it, Bob James, you name it. All the big smooth jazz artists at that time, they were playing like crazy. So, and that's I liked the music. It was not, to me, it was an elevator. It was more what I would describe, and I would even describe it today as a blend of popular music, not necessarily like pop covers or anything, but like at the time how you would make the trends for making a pop music that would be popular. I would say the same for jazz. as well for smooth jazz, as well as a blend of that with jazz elements, like not just instrumental, but some jazz concepts to it. Yes, there's a drum machine, things like that for a lot of it, but that's basically what I think of. It's just a blend, and I really got into it, really enjoyed it, listening to that radio station. Now, besides the artists I mentioned, and really I only knew at the time it was Kenny G because he really crossed over. But my first intro into an actual smooth jazz artist and actually buying an album was kind of a fluke too. Put it this way. So I went shopping one day with my parents, and there was a Best Buy that was connected to a mall. So I like to, if there's nothing going on, I like to go to Best Buy, check out the music, the CDs, so forth, video games too, and stuff like that. And in the music section for Best Buy at that time was huge. It covered like the main floor, and there's aisles of CDs. So at the end of the aisles, the end caps, they would have a few listening stations. So those listening stations would have like 6 CDs per end cap, and you would press a button connected to the album you want to listen to, and they have the headphones. You can just put it on and just play it. And sometimes they would even have like a fast, like a skip track and so forth. So they would have these end caps, and I decided, what the heck? I kind of look at each one, and I would always kind of either, if there's something I like to listen to, I would put it on, but usually it would be like a popular album or anything like that at the time. But one album caught my eye, and it was strictly the album cover. All right, I did not know the artist at all, never heard of him, didn't know anything about it, but the album cover caught my eye, and I decided to go ahead and listen to it. Now, it's one of those where, don't judge a book by its cover type thing, right? But in this case, I'm glad I did. And so immediately when I started put my headphones on and started playing the album, the very first song came out, I was head bopping it. I was into it. Yeah, it got me into it. And this is the song that I heard. That's the very first song. It happens to be the title track on this album called The Rippingtons, Weekend in Monaco. Okay? This is the album. And as you can see from the album cover, it was this cat driving a car, like pretty cool. I'm assuming that was supposed to be Monaco. I don't know. I've never been there. Don't know how it looks whatsoever. But this is pretty slick cat going to it. Now, I just literally listened to this album based off the cover. I had no clue who the Rippingtons were. If I knew anything about smooth jazz, the label, CGRP, Grusin and Rosen Productions, that should have been a dead giveaway, right? If you knew anything about smooth jazz at the time. But I didn't. I didn't care. I saw this cover. I gotta listen to it. I didn't know what kind of song or music it was. But after playing this song and the first 2 or 3, I kind of knew right away it was a smooth jazz, or at least jazz genre-oriented music. So I think I played 75% of it, got through, I think up to Vienna, maybe? Oh, no, past that. Probably Mocha Java, up to there, and then I had to go. But I pretty much didn't even skip a track. I just listened from the first song on all the way until I had to go home, basically. So weeks later, went to the Best Buy again. I think it's a different one. They didn't have this at the end cap at the music listening station anymore, but the album was on sale. I recognized it because it was the coolest. To me, it was a cool cover, right? One of the coolest covers of all. So I saw this. It was on sale. I think it was like $7.99 or something like that. Usually albums like this is like $10+. But I'm like, hey, ask my parents. I've listened. I told them I listened to this already. I loved it. Can you buy it for me? Just what the heck? It's on sale. It's less than $10. I promise not to ask for buying a video game anytime soon or something like that. So, and they bought it, and I took it home. Took the CD home. I think we got a CD player not too long before then, so I was able to use it. Played it, played it again, had the repeat all setting, and I was actually doing my homework, either homework or a school project, and I noticed the song playing in my head. Like I said, it's one of those goes in one side of the ear. You notice it, you head bop it, and code goes out, and it didn't affect my work or anything. Actually, it kept me awake a little bit. Just doing the homework, studying. I forgot exactly what I was doing, but it was definitely school related, and I absolutely enjoyed it. Um, and from there on out, Rippingtons was definitely, in my radar. All right. So at that time, also there were a lot of what you call used music CDs, music places that popped up here and there on strip malls, stuff like that. They're almost like these, they're just popping up everywhere, and you would go there. Majority of these places would have, all the used CDs, sometimes the smooth jazz stuff, and if they did, they're usually priced a bit lower than the popular ones. I'd say around $5 or so. And great thing about these places that they would have like a CD player and headphones, so you can listen to it. Whatever you're interested, you pick it out and just listen. And it happened to be, a lot of these places would have the smooth jazz stuff, and not much again, but quite a bit. And the ones I recognize, like the Rippingtons, I would go ahead and listen and purchase. Obviously, if I didn't like the album, I wouldn't purchase it. But I got the Moonlighting. I think this is the first album. Got Curves Ahead. Notice the cool covers, right? All these cats, right? This one is St. James Club. This one's pretty cool too. I gotta admit, this cover is pretty cool. I also have Tourist in Paradise, and that's probably my second favorite album, but I don't know where it is. I think I lent it to someone and never got it back, and this was a long time ago. So, I even bought this. Now, I listened to this at the used place, and I wasn't a big fan of it, but I bought it anyway. Just kind of like to keep it in the collection, right? Plus the cover's pretty cool too. So, you could see I was a fan of Rippingtons. I don't know I would consider myself a hardcore fan or anything, but I like the music. The music got to be something I like to listen to, so I did, and got into it. I got into some other artists too, David Sanborn, Benoit. I mean, all those kind of the artists from the GRP label are outside, but known to be in the smooth jazz genre. I kind of pick up. And eventually, just build my collection and my musical knowledge of that genre. Now, fast forward a bit. Fast forward to late 2000s, 2007, 2008. That's apparently when smooth jazz, the genre itself, died. Now, died being the radio station, at least the WNUA radio station I would listen to, just gave out. I think it just transferred over to a different station, or different music. So if you're doing research on that a little bit, I'm kind of when it died per se. They were always mentioning maybe a few years before it started to decline and got bad and got worse or something like that. Ratings weren't good. There's some conspiracy theories behind ratings as well. I'm not going to get into that because I don't think that was the major reason why smooth jazz as a genre just passed away. Personally, if they're saying it's mid 2000s or to late 2000s, I like to say take it 10 years, at least 10 years back. Okay, I'm thinking mid 90s. That's when, to me, smooth jazz started to decline. Now, at its peak, to me, I think it's around this time I bought this album. So this came out in 92. Okay, I was a little kid. Finally got a CD player and started listening to all kinds of CDs. A few years before, that's when I got into the WNUA stuff, the smooth jazz radio station. And a lot of great music came out from there. Now, when this album came out, and to me, that's when the peak, or if it already peaked, it plateaued for smooth jazz. It was around that time the Weekend Monaco album came out. Now, this album came out, Rippington Sahara. And now this is one of those, I think I bought used anyway. I bought it maybe a year later. And this came out in 94. Okay, so when I got this album, it's a Rippingtons album. It's like, you can't go wrong with that, right? Took it home, played it. You know, it's typical Rippingtons until the third song, okay? The third song on that album was called I'll Be Around. Now, think about it. It's, right, the Spinners? Yeah, it's the Spinners. So it's essentially a cover of the Spinners song. When I first heard it all the way through, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is, to me, it was absolute trash. The instrumental behind it, I thought was just karaoke-ish. Then the vocals came out. The vocals felt like they brought in people, they found someone off the street, brought them in and said, do you know the song? Yeah, I do. Okay, and then just sing it. Just sing the chorus or something. I'll be around. And that's what it felt like, put together. Karaoke instrumental with off the street singers. I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to disrespect or diss the singers at all. They could be actual singers or background singers or something in the music industry, but that whole song was just absolute trash. I was totally disappointed, and listening to the rest of the CD was okay. I mean, it to me it was kind of more mid for Rippington's album, but the I'll Be Around really pissed me off, basically. It just like, why the hell do it anyway? Especially after a second listen to it, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to go take the CD out and put the Spinners. Actually, I still think it was like a tape, but I had to go listen to the Spinners version of it just so that I don't get like, defrauded or something with the actual song and feel bad about it. But so that's what happened with how I felt with the Sahara album. But, I'm like, okay, maybe it's just a one-off thing. So, Rippingtons released another album. It came out in 96, I think. Yeah, 96, but I probably got it a bit later. Obviously, and I think I got this one new. And obviously, I'm waiting for sales and so forth. And it's this album. Rippington's Brave New World. Okay? Still a cool cat, no matter what. The covers are cool. So, now, on this album, okay, you look at it, played it. I didn't really know until I played it, but I'll tell you something. Is there a cover of a pop song? Yes. Caravan of Love, the Isley Brothers, right? Well, wait. There's another one. While My Guitar Gently Weeps, right? George Harrison. That's another cover. But wait. Right after that, Ain't No Stopping Us Now. It's McFadden and Whitehead, right? That one? I also think of the B-52s. I think, or at least the singers from there, they did a pretty good cover of that. But on this album alone, from 96, there's 3 freaking covers of pop songs on this album. Okay? So, and I'm going to say, you know where I'm getting at. They suck. I'll give While My Guitar Gently Weeps. So I thought that was a decent cover. Now, it's not a Prince at the Hall of Fame type of cover. Not close. But I thought it was okay for a cover, a jazz type of cover. Now, the others, and again, same thing, karaoke style. A lot of off the street type of singing. I'm sorry, it just wasn't good. I mean, not at all. And what I'm getting at is this: you could tell like from their best album, I consider the best album, Weekend in Monaco of the Rippingtons, and everything before. The Rippingtons was pretty much all original music, whether using synthesizers or not, if you like the melodies or not, it didn't matter. It's all original. There weren't any covers, I don't recall any covers of any songs, nor were there any vocals. Now, if there were vocals, there might be more of like a humming or type of thing, but it wasn't like a singing type of song, right? They're all original songs. They were all good in my mind, and in the smooth jazz genre. I mean, there were songs again that I can listen to, head bop to, and it doesn't kind of interfere with what I'm doing with schoolwork or anything like that. I thought it was perfect. Now, when the Sahara album came out and introduced a pop cover that was badly done, you know, that was in 94, mid 90s. That to me correlated to what the smooth jazz genre at the time was as well. So I started noticing that as well, mid 90s on, that there were, okay, let's say this. Originally, from a smooth jazz radio station standpoint, when I first heard it, maybe for every 7, 8 songs of smooth jazz songs I would hear, you would hear either a cover of a pop song or a vocal cover of something that, you know, outside of maybe a Sade or something like that, that type of thing. But it was strictly like instrumental jazz, but good. To me, it was good. Anyway, around the mid 90s and so forth, it started to become more like for every 5 songs that they played on the smooth jazz station, you would hear a cover song. And and when I mean cover, like a pop cover. And majority of these covers I felt were just lazy. They were lazily done. Again, karaoke-ish, so vocals and so forth. So, and it was a trend. And to me, it correlated with how the Rippingtons albums came to be. So after that Brave New World album, I didn't really wanted to buy any other Rippington album. But I gotta admit, I got one for free later on, much later on in the 2000s. I got this album, Black Diamond. I gotta admit, this is kind of back to their roots, but I don't know if this was their last album or close to it. This one didn't have, I don't recall, I'm looking at it right now, didn't have any covers, pop covers or anything like that. It was actually not bad, but this one was a kind of a promo, and the record stores at the time, promos and stuff, they couldn't sell it, so, or like the cutouts, things like that, so they would just put it in the front and a bin and for free. So I looked at it. Majority is crap. I didn't know, but I saw Rippingtons like free with that. Hey, it wasn't a bad album, but didn't matter anyway. I kind of pretty much was turned off by the Rippingtons by then, even with this album. And and this was in the 2000s, early 2000s, and as the smooth genre as a whole. Okay, so in the 2000s, it seemed like worse. It seemed like instead of 5 for every 5 songs, it seems like every 4, every 3 songs, there's either a cover of a pop song that's karaoke-ish, a vocal song that is not mid, it was mid, or what's even worse, they would play an actual pop song, whether, let's say, Steely Dan, Earth, Wind and Fire, After the Love Is Gone, that kind of thing, Anita Baker. They would play that a lot. Like, yeah, I get, they would play pop songs that have like a jazz, like, sound vibe to it, but still, I mean, if I want to listen to Steely Dan, Earth, Wind and Fire, or something like that, I'd rather go to listen to a classic rock station or something, listen to that instead. I don't want to listen to a smooth jazz genre station and listen to pop music, regardless if it has a jazzy feel to it. It's just, why, And to me, in late 90s to early 2000s, it turned me off completely. I mean, it correlated basically with the Rippingtons albums. I pretty much stopped listening to the smooth jazz radio in 2000, I'd say 2000s, early 2000s. Now, I'm not saying the smooth jazz genre itself was all that. I think majority and the trends was towards that, of just doing just lazy composition and filling out. It seems like filling out quotas. Like, it seems like every new album that came out late 90s, 2000s had to had at least 2 pop song covers. And again, usually those covers aren't they're mid, at best. And that's not, to me, that's not smooth jazz anymore. That's just bad, just pure badness. I mean, again, I don't know if it's maybe the record companies were pushing for something like that, or if to me, I think it could be that, but I think it's just some laziness as well. I mean, just creativity's gone, things like that. It just, if I can't think of 8 to 10 songs to put on an album, so I'm gonna pick out or make 3 or 4 cover songs and just stick it in there to fill a quota. I mean, that's what I meant by quota. Certainly felt that way. So to me, with the correlation, sure, it officially died in the late 2000s, at least my WNUA 95.5. But to me, the peak, the absolute peak was this album around this time, early 90s. This was the peak of smooth jazz. And this was more of the start of the decline of smooth jazz. Okay? Now, covers could have came before and after, but if you're talking about years and what I experienced, I kind of correlate with Rippingtons and so forth, and to me that's kind of the trend. Now, I'm not saying the stuff that came out late 90s, 2000s was bad. There's some good artists that came out. Early Chris Bodie, late 90s, maybe 2000, early 2000s was pretty good. The later years, yeah, he kind of trended to kind of mediocre stuff. They're David Benoit. I thought his later years, late 90s, 2000s, was actually better than his early years that he's more famous for, outside a few songs that I really love, and so forth. But majority to me was kind of trending toward the Brave New World album, which had the cover type stuff, and I didn't like it. And I think that's where it started to fall in the mid 90s and on. So now going back to just smooth jazz in general, I get the hate for it, especially from people who really understand jazz or are jazz purists. I get it. I understand their take. Now, is it a bad thing? Again, I always thought smooth jazz was a kind of a blend of trying to be popular at the time, whatever they're in at that moment, with jazz elements, jazz vibes to it. And it's the smooth jazz genre itself. I mean, not only was it part of my kind of childhood, just listening to music itself, but I thought it was a perfect gateway into jazz as a whole, understanding jazz, not just smooth jazz, but just jazz in general. When I got into Rippingtons and so forth, I got into later Kenny G and things like that. I got into George Benson, Earl Klugh, I mentioned before, Grover Washington Jr., but the early years, so there's 70s stuff, and I got into that. I got into the fusion, like Weather Report. I got into the CTI label, so kind of similar to the GRP label, but in the 70s, kind of mix of fusion and popular stuff. Like I got into Art Farmer, Tony Williams. I mean, just in that period of time, and it was, like I said, it was a gateway into jazz genre itself. Now, would have got into it anyway without smooth jazz, maybe. Now the hard bop, bebop, the Miles Davis and so forth, John Coltrane, I got into that from the library. Really, they had a small jazz section of CDs, and when I was borrowing them, the ones you would see are the popular names. Again, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Dave Brubeck, the top of the top names you would hear. Wynton Marsalis would be the more current one, but at that time, but you know what I mean. So, and now, from a jazz purist standpoint, right? Let's say you would compare something like a John Coltrane, Giant Steps, to a Rippingtons Weekend in Monaco, right? And this is not a good comparison, but let's say, you know, from the reason why I'm bringing these two up is I'm trying to make a point of accessibility. Now, smooth jazz, no matter how much you hate it or anything, it has its, again, popular vibes. Like when you look at smooth jazz, Kenny G, everyone mocks Kenny G, but you gotta admit, Dual Tones, that album, Songbird, that song, fantastic, no matter what. And I think Songbird was one of the few smooth jazz songs that actually crossed over to the top charts. I'm not talking about the jazz, but I'm talking about popular top charts, right? It might have hit number one, I don't know, but at least top 10, I'm pretty sure. Sade with the Smooth Operator, so forth. I mean, it's music that it's accessible to the majority in a sense that if it's on the top of those charts, the people listening to it and liking it, right? For me, it's that, and albums like Rippingtons, Weekend in Monaco. Now, I know you're comparing to music like Giant Steps. I know you can, if you're a music theorist or anything, you take a course, you can spend a semester trying to analyze Giant Steps and still not even be able to play it, as opposed to this, you probably get it in the first day. But, I get the complexity, but then that's the thing. There's complexity, even though it might sound smooth, no pun intended, at the end of the day, versus something that's kind of straightforward. Again, all about melodies. If you like it and so forth, I think this is just more easier to the ears to pick up and understand as opposed to this. Even though, yeah, this might be better overall from a technical standpoint, but right, who cares, right? It's just what you listen to. And it smooth jazz being nationally syndicated radio station just tells you something as well. It's popular enough to be its own dedicated radio station nationally. People listen to it. It was popular definitely in the 80s and 90s, maybe through the mid 2000s. I don't know. I haven't followed it in the 2000s at all, but it's the only jazz genre that can do that at that point in time. If you want to get Miles Davis, hard bop, stuff like that, you wouldn't get that. You could only find that in like a college radio station or a public local station like that. You're not going to get it from a nationally syndicated type of station. So I think smooth jazz itself, done right, like Weekend in Monaco and other artists that I would consider were making great music at the time. I think it's a great introduction into jazz in general. And that's the thing. So it has a piece of my heart. Getting smooth jazz was part of my childhood, and it's, I had fond memories of it. I kind of wish it could continue on, maybe get better eventually, get rid of all the covers and kind of go back to a Weekend in Monaco type of album, dual tones. If you needed singing, there's some good singing in that one, or a good cover, I think, of that one in that album. If they could do that, I think it can make a good comeback. But from what I'm reading and so forth, it looks like it'll never come back. It might be an underground thing and forever be an underground thing, but so be it, But anyway, hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in smooth jazz and what really got me into it and why I liked it, again, this was the album that got me into, I wouldn't say hardcore smooth jazz per se, but it got me into it from like more deeper rather than just listening to it on the radio. Listen to this album if you can. If you never heard of them, especially the first song, but listen to the whole album. Now, if you don't like it, okay, then you probably don't like the smooth jazz that I like, and you probably won't like smooth jazz in general. But if you do like it, understand why it's not elevator music. If you think it is, I don't know what to say. That I don't know what elevator music is anymore. But this is definitely not elevator music. It's got great melodies. It's got everything, the playing, everything. It's just perfect stuff, and it's not going to put you to sleep. It's perfectly smooth, as the genre says. This is as smooth as it gets from a jazz standpoint. So give this a listen if you're interested. Then let me know as well. All right. That's all I had to say. Appreciate it. Next time. Thank you. Bye.